Why are you still pretending that your life isn't a dumpster fire of wasted potential? Seriously, look at yourself. You're sitting there, scrolling, waiting for some perfect moment to start living, while your most valuable asset is literally evaporating. Think about your neighbor, Dave. Dave spends 4 hours every Sunday meal prepping organic kale so he can save time during the week. What does he do with that saved time? He spends it watching productivity hacks on YouTube at 1.5 times speed so he can optimize his sleep cycle. Dave is a high-performance engine idling in a garage that's on fire. He's so busy preparing to live that he's forgotten he's actually alive. You're probably Dave, and if that makes you mad, good. You should be furious at how much of your life you've traded for a to-do list that's never going to be finished. Welcome to a reality check you didn't ask for, but desperately need. Today, we're dissecting 4,000 Weeks Time Management for Mortals by Oliver Burkeman. Before we dive into the wreckage of your current lifestyle, a quick legal note. This video is transformative in nature, providing original commentary, critique, and educational analysis of the book. It falls squarely under the Fair Use Act and is intended for educational purposes only. Now, let's talk about the man behind the mirror. Oliver Burkeman is a British journalist who spent years as a self-confessed productivity geek. He wrote a long-running column for The Guardian called "This Column Will Change Your Life," where he basically beta-tested every life hack, app, and filing system known to man. He was the guy with the fancy fountain pens and the 15-minute time blocks, convinced that if he just found the right system, he'd finally reach a state of effortless productivity. But in this book, Burkeman admits he was full of it. He realized that modern time management isn't a tool for freedom, it's a form of pathological avoidance. The core theme of this book is radical finitude. The average human lives for about 4,000 weeks. That's it. If you're 30, you've already burned through 1,500 of them. This book isn't about how to do more. It's a searing indictment of why your hustle culture is a delusion and why your worship of efficiency is actually making you a slave. Think about your current morning. You probably woke up, checked a notification on your phone that told you how poorly you slept, and immediately felt the weight of 1,000 things you should be doing. We live in a world where we treat our time like a conveyor belt, a series of containers passing us by that we feel a desperate, pathological need to fill. If you leave a container empty, you're lazy. If you try to cram too much in, you're stressed. But either way, you're just a cog in a machine that's trying to sell you the lie that if you just get a little more efficient, you'll finally be happy. But let's look at why you're so miserable, and for that, we have to go back to a time before you could track your heart rate on a watch. Imagine you're a peasant in medieval England. Your life probably sucked. You had pigs in your hut, and the plague was always a weekend away. But you had one thing modern productivity influencers would kill for. You didn't have a problem with time. You didn't save time or waste time because time wasn't a thing you owned. It was just the medium in which your life happened. You milked the cow because the cow needed milking, not because it was on your Google Calendar for 6:15 a.m. This was task orientation. The rhythms of life emerge from the work itself, not from some abstract timeline in your head. Then, we invented the mechanical clock, and everything went to hell. Clocks were originally for monks to coordinate prayers, but the Industrial Revolution turned them into a whip. Suddenly, time became a resource to be bought, sold, and used efficiently, like coal or iron. Your boss isn't paying for your soul, they're paying for containers of your time, and they want every single one filled to the brim. This is why you feel that joyless urgency even when you're on vacation. You're thinking with a watch in your hand, judging every moment by its usefulness for a future that hasn't happened yet. You aren't living time, you're trying to master it, and the more you try to master it, the more it ends up mastering you. This leads us directly into the efficiency trap, which is the biggest piece of corporate gaslighting in history. You've been told that if you just get faster, you'll finally have enough time to do what you actually want. It's a lie. Efficiency doesn't clear the decks, it just makes the conveyor belt move faster. Think about your email. You probably spent all of last week trying to reach inbox zero. You bought the apps, you learned the shortcuts, and you felt like a god for exactly 6 minutes when that screen finally went blank. And what was your reward? More email. When you become the reliable person who replies to everything in 10 minutes, people don't stop emailing you. They email you more because you've trained them that you're always available. It's the Kaiser reward of modern life. If a doctor sees more patients more efficiently, the hospital doesn't give them a break. They just schedule more patients. You're like Sisyphus, but instead of a boulder, you're pushing a never-ending pile of as per my last email notifications up a hill. And it's not just work. Look at your bucket list. You're trying to consume experiences, the Greek islands, the Michelin star dinners, the 10-step skincare routines, as if life is a buffet you can actually finish. But the world has an infinite number of experiences, and your time is strictly finite. The more wonderful experiences you have, the more you realize you're missing out on, and the existential overwhelm just gets worse. Stop trying to clear the decks. The decks will never be clear. Most of the things you're doing right now are just middling priorities that are stealing the life from the things that actually matter. You're digging a deeper hole with a faster shovel, and you're too busy being productive to notice that you're actually just hiding from the reality that you can't do it all. And if that makes you mad, good. You should be furious at how much of your life you've traded for a to-do list that's never going to be finished. Because here is the brutal truth you're trying to outrun. You are a limited, finite human being, and every time you refuse to make a choice, you're just committing a slow-motion suicide of your potential. Let's get real about why you're so terrified of making a decision. You call it being flexible or keeping your options open. But in reality, you're just a coward. You are suffering from a pathological refusal to confront your finitude. The philosopher Martin Heidegger, who was a terrible person but had some terrifyingly accurate ideas, argued that you don't have time like you have a pair of shoes. You are time. Every decision you make is a form of murder. The original Latin for decide, decidere, literally means to cut off. When you choose to spend your evening scrolling through main character edits on TikTok or watching a 3-minute day in the life of a Silicon Valley intern who spends more time eating avocado toast than working, you are effectively murdering every other version of that hour you could have spent doing something that actually mattered. Every yes is a death sentence for 1,000 no's. And because you can't handle the bright sadness of that reality, you live what Burkeman calls a provisional life. You're always getting ready to live, treating your current existence like a dress rehearsal for a show that's never going to open. Think about the way people act at concerts now. They aren't watching the artist. They're watching their phone screen recording the artist. They are preparing to look at it later because they can't handle the fact that the moment is happening, it's finite, and it's disappearing forever. This is the causal catastrophe, the delusional belief that the only value in what you're doing right now is the result it produces in the future. It's why you meal prep like a robot and optimize your sleep like a machine. You've turned your life into a vehicle to travel toward a future state of happiness that, by definition, never arrives because you're too busy driving to ever actually get out and look at the scenery. This leads us to the biggest, most steaming pile of horse crap in the productivity world, the rocks in the jar parable. You've seen it 1,000 times in hustle culture videos. A smug teacher puts big rocks in a jar, then pebbles, then sand, and tells you that if you put the big rocks in first, everything fits. It's an absolute lie. The teacher rigged the game by only bringing a few rocks. In your actual life, there are an infinite number of big rocks: family, career, health, side hustles, the environment, and they will never all fit in your tiny jar of 4,000 weeks. The secret isn't better prioritization, it's becoming a better procrastinator. You are going to fail at most things. You are going to neglect almost everything. The only question is whether you will choose what to fail at or let it happen by accident while you're busy answering urgent emails from people you don't even like. You need to learn the art of strategic underachievement. This means consciously deciding in advance what you're going to bomb at. Maybe for the next 6 months, you decide your house is going to be a disaster zone and your lawn is going to look like the Amazon rainforest so that you can actually finish your degree or raise your kid without losing your mind. You remove the sting of shame by making the failure a choice. And while we're calling out your nonsense, let's talk about your fear of settling. You've been fed this Disney-fied lie that settling is a crime. Guess what? Settling is inevitable. If you spend 10 years searching for the perfect partner on Hinge instead of committing to a real, flawed human, you haven't kept your options open. You've just spent 10 years settling for a life of restless searching. True striving requires settling. You can't be an ultra-successful anything without settling on one path and murdering the others. If you want to actually accomplish something, follow the Buffett rule. Make a list of your top 25 goals. Pick the top 5. Then, and this is the part you'll hate, avoid the other 20 at all costs. Those middling priorities are your real enemies because they are just attractive enough to seduce you away from the 5 things that actually give your life meaning. Stop trying to be limitless. The only route to freedom is to admit you are a limited, finite, winging it human being. Once you admit defeat and accept that you'll never get it all done, you can finally start doing the next most necessary thing. You need to stop using productivity as a way to avoid the anxiety of being alive. You're like an alcoholic who thinks the cure for a hangover is another drink, except your drink is a new life sync Notion template or a 5 a.m. cold plunge routine. These are just ways to numb the pain of realizing that your time is running out. So stop waiting for the perfect system to arrive. It's not coming. You have to learn the anti-skill of declining to clear the decks. Stop trying to get through the small stuff so you can finally get to the big stuff. The decks will never be clear. You have to pay yourself first when it comes to time. If a project matters, do it now, even if it's only for 15 minutes, and let the rest of the world scream for your attention while you ignore it. But here is where your little efficiency quest really hits a wall. You can have the most optimized, color-coded 5 a.m. club to-do list on the planet, but it doesn't mean a damn thing if you're spending your finite life watching 2 reporters wrap rubber bands around a watermelon until it explodes. Don't act like you're better than the 3 million people who did exactly that on a random Friday. You do it every single day when you fall into a TikTok doom-scrolling trance, surfacing 2 hours later with a dry mouth and a soul that feels like it's been put through a paper shredder. You didn't choose to spend your afternoon learning about the latest clean girl aesthetic or watching a billionaire's morning routine. You were hijacked. Here's the cold, hard reality that should make you want to throw your phone into the nearest body of water. Your attention is not just a resource. Your attention is your life. Most other resources, like money or electricity, just facilitate your life, but attention is the literal substance of it. When you look back at the end of your 4,000 weeks, your life will simply be the sum total of everything you paid attention to. If you spent those weeks arguing with anonymous trolls or checking for likes like a lab rat pressing a lever for a pellet, then that, and only that, is what your life was. It is not an exaggeration to say that when you pay attention to something you don't value, you are paying with your life. And stop blaming the algorithm as if you're some innocent victim. You are a willing collaborator in your own distraction. We love to complain about Silicon Valley's persuasive design, those variable rewards like the drag down to refresh gesture that mimic a casino slot machine. But the truth is, you're eager for the excuse to look away. You use Twitter or TikTok as an emotional eject button because the thing you're actually supposed to be doing is hard or boring or forces you to realize you might not be as talented as you think you are. You would rather be the fuel, a log thrown onto Silicon Valley's fire, than face the reality that your time is limited. To understand how pathetic your avoidance has become, look at the story of Shinzen Young, an American who wanted to be a Buddhist monk and had to douse himself with buckets of freezing melted snow in the Japanese mountains. He realized that the more he tried to check out mentally and think about something else, the more the ice-cold water felt like literal torture. The only way the suffering became tolerable was when he stopped resisting and focused more intensely on the freezing water. This is your problem. You suffer from the intimate interrupter, that voice inside you that whistles and pounds on the door, promising an easier life if you'll just open one more browser tab. You find boredom aggressively unpleasant because it's not just a lack of interest. It's an intense reaction to the experience of confronting your limited control over time. When you're bored, you're forced to face the reality that this is it, that you are trapped in a messy, incomplete, finite moment that you cannot master. So you flee into the endless present of the internet where space doesn't matter and limits don't exist. You think you're being free, but you're just seeking relief from the discomfort of confronting your own limitations. The ultimate anti-skill you need to learn isn't another focus hack or a digital detox. It's the ability to stay with the discomfort of being a limited human being. Stop expecting life to not feel like an icy bucket of water to the face. The reward for accepting the constraints of reality is that they suddenly stop feeling like a prison and start feeling like the only place where you can actually, finally, be alive. Now, if you've stopped flailing around in the icy water of your own distractions, let's talk about your other favorite coping mechanism, your Google Calendar. You know the one, the color-coded hall of mirrors where you've meticulously planned your ideal life 3 months in advance. You're the person who gets antsy if a meeting starts at 2:02 instead of 2 o'clock, or you're currently sweating about your Christmas itinerary while it's still June. You're trying to use planning as a lasso to pull the future under your command, but here is the cold water reality check. A plan is just a thought. It's a present moment statement of intent, and the future is under absolutely zero obligation to comply with your digital hallucinations. You've likely been slapped in the face by Hofstadter's law without even knowing its name. It states that any task will always take longer than you expect, even when you take into account Hofstadter's law. You give yourself 2 hours for the grocery run because you know you're usually optimistic, and it still takes 2.5. Reality is like an angry god determined to remind you that it has the upper hand, no matter how much slack you build into your schedule. Look at the building of the Sydney Opera House. They thought it would take 4 years. It took 14. Your constant worrying isn't preparation. It's a repetitious, failing attempt to generate a feeling of security. You're demanding to know in advance that things will turn out fine, that the candidate will win, that the money won't run out, or that your latest TikTok manifestation will actually pay the rent. Stop telling yourself you have time. You don't possess it like the cash in your wallet or the shoes on your feet. You just expect it. You assume you have 3 hours this afternoon, but a burst pipe, a needy boss, or a sudden stroke of death can snatch that away before you even blink. You only know you had time once it's already turned into the past. To borrow a heavy thought from Heidegger, you don't have time. You are time. You are nothing but a sequence of moments, and yet you spend most of those moments living in the when I finally mind. When I finally get my workload under control. When I finally find the right partner, when the kids finally leave for university, then I can relax. Then the real life begins. This is what the author calls the causal catastrophe. You're treating your entire existence as a means to an end, a vehicle to travel toward a future state of happiness that, by definition, never arrives because you're too busy driving to ever actually get out and look at the scenery. Look at how we parent today. It's a perfect example of this mental sickness. You have the baby trainers obsessed with schedules and the natural parents obsessed with future psychological health. But both groups are doing the exact same thing. They are instrumentalizing their children. They're treating a newborn baby, who is nothing but sheer presence, as a project to be optimized for a future that hasn't happened yet. Nature doesn't disdain what only lives for a day, but you do. You think a child's purpose is to grow up, but as the philosopher Herzen said, a child's purpose is simply to be a child. This future-focused attitude is a hoax that starts in nursery school, where they tell you you're getting ready for kindergarten, then high school, then the business world. You're like a donkey running after a carrot tied to your own head. You're never here, you never get there, and you're never actually alive. Even your hobbies are probably telic, meaning you only do them for the outcome, like the corporate lawyer who can't enjoy a family dinner because it can't be billed by the hour. And don't get me started on your pathetic attempts to be here now. You go to see the Northern Lights or Crater Lake, and instead of experiencing the awe, you're busy thinking about how it looks like a screensaver or recording it on your phone so you can look at it later. The more you try to point at the moment and force yourself to be present, the more the experience is drained of its flavor. You're trying to use mindfulness as another tool for mastery, another way to feel in control of your unfolding time. The brutal reality is that every moment of your life is a last time. There will be a final time you pick up your child, a final time you swim in the sea, a final time you have a deep conversation with a friend. Usually, you won't know it's the last time while it's happening. To treat these moments solely as stepping stones to some future oasis is a level of obliviousness that would be jaw-dropping if we weren't all doing it every single day. You need to learn the secret of not minding what happens. This doesn't mean you stop acting, it means you stop the inner demand for the future to conform to your desires. You give up the spurious immortality of personal productivity, as John Maynard Keynes called it. The idea that jam is only jam if it's jam tomorrow, never jam today. Once you admit defeat, once you accept that you'll never have things in perfect working order, you can finally stop postponing your existence and actually show up for the life you're currently missing. And because you finally realize that you aren't arriving at your life but are already drowning in it, let's talk about how you relax. Or rather, how you've turned your leisure time into just another branch of your corporate grind. We live in a world where rest has to be justified as a way to be more productive on Monday morning, treating our bodies like biological batteries that need a quick recharge before being plugged back into the economic machine. You don't go for a walk because it's nice. You go to clear your head so you can come back and crush your KPIs, which is just work disguised as wellness. The ancient Greeks would look at your life and think you were a slave, regardless of your six-figure salary, because to them, work was a deviation from the higher calling of leisure, which was the end goal of existence. Now, you've been trained to feel a physical itch of guilt if you spend an afternoon doing something that isn't growth-oriented or monetizable. You can't even have a hobby anymore without some hustle culture TikToker telling you to turn it into a side hustle, because we suffer from idleness aversion, a pathological inability to just sit still without feeling like we're failing at life. You treat your time off as an investment in your future self, which means you never actually show up for your present self. If you want to be a real rebel in this efficiency-obsessed era, you need to find your own version of Rod Stewart's model trains, an activity that is completely and utterly useless to your career. Stewart has spent decades building a grimy model railway of 1940s Chicago, hand-painting the soot onto the tiny sidewalks because he loves the process, not because it's going to help him sell more records. This is what philosophers call an atelic activity, where the value isn't in the finish line, but in the doing itself. If you're hiking just to reach the summit so you can post a main character reel, you're doing it wrong. The most efficient way to get to the top is to never leave the car. But you can't just do for the sake of doing, can you? Because you're caught in the impatience spiral, a modern disease where technology makes everything faster while simultaneously making us more aggravated by the slightest delay. You are the person who honks your horn in traffic as if your rage will somehow prod the physical world into moving faster, a howl of rage at the fact that you can't dictate the pace of reality. You wait 60 seconds for a microwave and find it more frustrating than your ancestors did, waiting 2 hours for an oven, because once things can happen fast, you begin to demand they happen instantaneously. This is what therapists call an addiction to speed. And just like an alcoholic, you think the cure for your anxiety is more of the thing that's killing you, going even faster. You can't even read a book anymore without feeling a twitchiness to check your phone after 3 sentences because reading refuses to conform to your desire for mastery. It simply takes the time it takes. To break this, you have to crash to earth and admit that you are powerless over the tempo of the universe. Only when you give up the fantasy of controlling the pace of reality can you acquire the ultimate superpower, patience. Patience isn't being a passive doormat. It's an active muscular state of alert presence that allows you to stay with the discomfort of a problem until the solution actually arrives. So, you finally crashed to earth and admitted that your need for speed is just a high-speed chase away from your own anxiety. But here is where most of you will fail. You'll try to fix your impatience by looking for a new hack, a new app, or a new lifestyle design that promises total control. You are like the amateur photographer in Helsinki who jumps off the bus at the first stop because your work looks derivative, only to realize you're just starting the same boring journey over again on a different route. This is the Helsinki bus station parable, and you need to burn it into your brain. In the beginning, every bus follows the same route out of the city, making the same stops. In your career, your art, or your relationships, you'll start out looking like a knockoff of everyone else, and the temptation to jump off the bus and try a new path to find your true self is overwhelming. But if you keep jumping buses, you'll spend your whole life in the suburbs of unoriginality. Originality lies on the far side of unoriginality, and the only way to get there is to stay on the fucking bus long enough for the routes to finally diverge into something unique. Let's talk about the superpower you're too busy to develop, patience. In our culture, patience has a massive PR problem. We think it's passive or for people waiting for a promotion they'll never get. It's not. True patience is an active, almost muscular state of alert presence. Look at the students of Jennifer Roberts at Harvard who are forced to go to a museum and look at a single painting for 3 hours straight. No TikTok, no checking your stats, no quick runs for a matcha latte. For the first 40 minutes, you will be in literal agony, convinced you've seen everything there is to see. But if you stay on the bus, if you refuse to succumb to the itch of distraction, around the 80-minute mark, something shifts. The painting stops being a thing you're consuming and starts being an experience as hidden details. A hidden merchant or an unexplained shadow finally emerge. You realize that by surrendering the fantasy of controlling the pace of reality, you finally get a real purchase on life. The reason you're miserable is that you treat every problem as a bug to be fixed, so you can finally reach a state of no problems. Newsflash: a life without problems is a life without anything worth doing. You need to develop a taste for having problems, because the presence of problems isn't an impediment to a meaningful existence. It is the very substance of one. This is the essence of radical incrementalism, the habit of the world's most successful writers who work for only 3 hours a day but do it religiously, while you hustle for 14 hours once a month and wonder why your novel is still just a work in progress in your notes app. You have to be willing to stop when your daily time is up, even if you feel like you have energy, because pushing too hard is just another form of impatience. And speaking of lifestyle design, let's call out the biggest lie on your For You page, the digital nomad fantasy. You see the guy with the laptop on a beach in Bali and think, that's it, that's freedom. But have you noticed he looks incredibly lonely? That's because he's a victim of a fundamental misunderstanding of what time is. You treat time like money, something to hoard and spend solely on yourself. But time is actually a network good. A telephone is worthless if you're the only person who owns one. It only becomes valuable when others have it and you're linked to them. Your time is the same. Having all the time in the world to yourself is actually a form of social ostracization, which used to be the worst punishment pre-modern tribes could inflict. Look at Super Mario, the guy who has lived on cruise ships for 2 decades. He doesn't have to do laundry or take out the trash, but he prowls the decks with a cocktail, informing strangers he's the happiest guy in the world, while they politely nod and try to get away from him. He has total sovereignty over his time, and he's essentially a ghost. The freedom you're chasing to work whenever you want, wherever you want, is actually desynchronizing society. It's why you and your 3 best friends can never find an hour to grab a beer. It's not that you don't have the time, it's that you don't have the same portion of time. We've traded communal rhythms for a color-coded work week where everyone is on a different schedule, and the result is a vacuum of collective action. In 1929, the Soviet Union tried to optimize time by moving to a 5-day continuous work week where everyone's day off was different. It was a disaster that destroyed families and social life because your weekend was someone else's Tuesday. You are doing this to yourself voluntarily. True freedom isn't the ability to never be interrupted by others. It's the willingness to fall in with the rhythms of community. It's the Swedish fika, the daily ritual where everyone, from the CEO to the intern, stops for coffee and cake at the same time. It's the strange sense of personal enlargement that comes from marching in step with other people or singing in a mediocre community choir. Stop trying to hoard your 4,000 weeks like a dragon guarding a pile of gold. You're just ending up alone in a cave. The most meaningful things you can do with your life, socializing, dating, raising kids, require you to sacrifice your control and synchronize your life with other flawed, unpredictable human beings. Power over your time is a trap. Your time can be too much your own. Stop trying to hoard your 4,000 weeks like a dragon guarding a pile of gold. You're just ending up alone in a cave. But here is the part where your ego is really going to take a hit. You've been told to have main character energy, right? TikTok is full of it. People filming themselves walking through grocery stores like they're in a slow motion indie film, convinced the universe is holding its breath just to see what kind of oat milk they buy. It's time for some cosmic insignificance therapy, and honestly, it's the only thing that's going to stop you from having a mental breakdown over your unread emails. We have this pathological egocentricity bias where we think the few thousand weeks we happen to be alive are the literal linchpin of human history. You think you need to put a dent in the universe like some Silicon Valley tech bro, or your life doesn't count. Let's do some math that will make you feel as small as you actually are. Human civilization is only about 6,000 years old. If you visualize a chain of people who live to be 100, it only takes 60 people to span the entirety of human history. 60. That's fewer people than you probably have in your close friends list on Instagram. Henry VIII sat on the throne only 5 centenarian lifetimes ago. On a cosmic scale, your life isn't even a blink. It's a microscopic flicker of near nothingness between 2 infinite tracks of time. And that is excellent news. Why? Because it means the bar for a well-spent life is actually on the floor. You don't need to be Michelangelo or Einstein to earn your right to exist. If the universe doesn't give a flying toss about your to-do list, then you are finally free to stop devaluing your ordinary life. Preparing a meal for your kids or writing a half-decent poem isn't settling. It's literally all there is. Stop holding your life to an over-demanding standard of remarkableness that nobody can actually meet. The iPhone will be forgotten. Your legacy will be dust. So just be here. The reason this is so hard for you is that you're suffering from the human disease, the obsession with control. You want certainty. You want to know in advance that your plans will work out, that your partner won't leave, and that your side hustle will make you a millionaire. But you aren't the master of time. You are time. You're like a person trying to climb out of a river while being the water itself. There's nowhere to go. Because you can't handle this vulnerability, you live a provisional life. You're always getting ready for real life to begin. You think, once I get my degree, or once the kids leave home, or once I finally get organized, then I'll be happy. You're treating your current existence as a boring dress rehearsal for a show that's never going to open. You have a terrific fear of being pinned down to the unique, flawed, messy human that you actually are right now. Admit defeat. Your standards for yourself are unreachable and frankly, kind of cruel. Salvation isn't coming in the form of a new productivity app. The moment of truth isn't in the future. It's right now while you're listening to this, probably while doing something else to avoid being alone with your thoughts. If you want to actually start living before your 4,000 weeks are up, stop asking what will make you happiest and start asking, does this choice diminish me or enlarge me? Most of the time, you're choosing comfortable diminishment, hiding in busyness so you don't have to face the fact that you might fail at something that actually matters. Stop waiting until you know what you're doing. Newsflash, everyone is just winging it all the time. The people in charge of the government, the CEOs, the experts, they're all just staggering from crisis to crisis, inventing plausible sounding nonsense as they go. If total authority is never coming, you might as well give it your all right now. Jung had the ultimate advice for your existential overwhelm. Quietly do the next most necessary thing. Not the next 50 things, just the one in front of you. You're a medieval stonemason adding a few bricks to a cathedral you'll never see finished, and that's enough. But wait, let's address the final layer of your delusion: hope. You probably think hope is your beacon in the dark, but in reality, it's a curse. To hope is to wait for some babysitter, like the government or the future, to save you. Stop hoping that the world will stop melting or that your schedule will magically clear up. Give up that master hope that this isn't really it. When you stop hoping for a rescue, you re-inhabit the power you actually have in the present. Things are already not okay, and that is your liberation. Once you no longer need the world to feel certain and safe, you can finally roll up your sleeves and do the work that counts. So, here is your reality check checklist, and I don't care if you're busy. Adopt a fixed volume approach to your life. Keep 2 to-do lists, one for the infinite junk you'll never do, and a closed list of 10 things that actually matter, and don't you dare add an 11th until one is finished. Serialize your life. Focus on one big thing and see it to completion before you jump to the next shiny object. Decide in advance what you're going to bomb at so you can focus your energy where it counts. If your lawn looks like a jungle because you were busy being a present parent, that's a win, not a failure. Stop checking your productivity debt every morning and start a done list instead. Celebrate the fact that you brushed your teeth or made a coffee if you have to. Make your phone as boring as humanly possible. Delete the social apps, switch the screen to grayscale, and turn it from a toy into a tool. Seek out novelty in the mundane. Stop thinking you need a trip to Bali to feel alive, and just try taking a different route to work or paying twice the usual attention to your morning toast. Be a researcher in your relationships. Instead of trying to control people, try being curious about who they actually are. Cultivate instantaneous generosity. If you have a kind thought, act on it now, because later usually means never. And for the love of everything holy, practice doing absolutely nothing for 5 minutes a day just to prove you aren't a mindless production machine. Stop managing your time. Start inhabiting it. Buy the book 4,000 Weeks by Oliver Burkeman if you want the full icy cold shower experience, or don't, but stop pretending you have forever. Your time is running out. Stop wasting it trying to be a machine and start being immortal. Thanks for listening to this reality check. If this made you mad, good. It means I hit a nerve you've been trying to numb. Now go do the next most necessary thing. I'm out.